space, and then your name, location, and your message, and we'll try to pick up at any that really hit the mark. They're all charged at standard rate, so why not get ready to text? In tonight's show, I'll be talking with a special guest who is a director of the Animal Pathology Field Unit, an organisation which researches truly bizarre animal mutilations, which have been occurring over many years across the UK and abroad. We're going to follow this show with the first hour of a special report on the subject by Richard D. Hall of richplanet.net. And I have to warn you that some of the images we'll be looking at in this show may not be for the squeamish. So switch off now if you're a squeam. My guest is David Caton. What a show we've got tonight. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Theo.
Well, it's really good to have you here. So tell me, how on earth did you get involved in this kind of investigation?
Well, I was a bit involved in the UFO subject initially with Quest International. And of course the Director of Research and Investigations then, who I reported to when I signed on in '93, was Tony Dodd.
Okay.
So Tony Dodd had some information on the mutilations and acquainted me with it, and I thought, goodness me, this is interesting stuff. Now, I had been an investigator for about 3 years.
What, into UFOs?
UFOs.
Did you have an experience when you were in the forces?
Oh yes, that sort of alerted me to the fact that there were intelligent crafts coming here under control, obviously, and this was in Cyprus in 1958.
Can we have image one, please?
So what happened there was, on the radar site, which is up on top of the Troodos Mountains, Mount Olympus.
This is the picture here. This is the Troodos Mountains
in
Cyprus.
Yes, it's like 6,000 odd feet.
Doesn't snow there very often, does it? Or
quite a bit, yes. People ski up there in the summertime, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, this object was on the radar. Oh, I explained that as photographers, people had to take turns to be up there photographing the screen. And
the radar screen?
The radar screens, because of some experimental radar gear going on at the same time.
Okay.
And there was some excitement in the radar room. That's about 6 o'clock in the morning.
I hope we're done with that picture now.
And this object came up from Egypt across the Med.
Yes. And
it was on radar in Cyprus, Malta, and a radar site in Libya at the time. And it was doing 12,000 miles an hour. Halfway across the Med, it did a sharp 90-degree turn with no loss of speed, and just sort of clipped the west coast of Cyprus, the Paphos end. And then we scrambled 2 hunter jets from Nicosia to try and intercept. And the thing was at 38,000 feet at that point. And then it shot up vertically, just like that, to 60,000. Again, and then carried on at 12 to 18,000 miles an hour across the 40 miles of ocean to Turkey and eventually off radar.
So
that's
this was all seen by everybody who was involved?
Yes, there was 7 or 8 people there, radar technicians and so on. And 8 o'clock in the morning, a wing commander appeared from Nicosia headquarters and lined everyone up and said, OK, chaps, you've all signed the Official Secrets Act. You don't mention this. But since it's 50 odd years, I don't mind mentioning it. So then, when I finished at British Aerospace, where I worked for 27 years, I contacted Tony Dodd and said, do you need an investigator for the Greater Manchester area? And he said, yes, fine, sign me up.
So this is the UFO magazine?
UFO magazine.
Let's have a quick look at picture 2 then.
Yes, it was the Quest magazine, which was a great magazine, and I ended up being a contributor for that, as well as researching and interviewing UFO witnesses. Anyway, I sort of decided that you know, recording people's sightings is all very well, but it didn't really, to me, progress it very far.
Okay.
So I thought, if we can get hold of some animal carcasses which have been mutilated in the fashion that Tony was showing me in images and describing.
Yeah, because there has been a lot of stuff over the years, hasn't there? I always thought it was a phenomenon that was primarily in North America.
Yeah, this is a common mistake with people because of the publicity from the States, which was largely a result of Linda Moulton Howe's investigative journalism and producing a documentary which won an Emmy Award that brought it to wide attention.
And it was
cattle.
Mostly to do with cattle, wasn't it?
Cattle in the States. So people quite rightly think, or wrongly I should say, that it's only confined to the United States. but that's not so. And the fact it was happening in the UK, I thought, I can perhaps get to grips with this.
So you were one of the founders of this animal pathology field unit?
Yeah, I suppose it's fair to say in 1997, when I started looking at the animal problem, I was probably the only serious researcher in the whole of UK. In fact, Graham Birdsall, bless him, at one point said I was the leading investigator in animal mutilations, which was rather humorous because I said to him, I was probably the only one doing it.
And Graham Birdsall, of course, was the editor of UFO magazine, now sadly deceased.
Yes, it's a great shame. Yes.
Great shame. He was a marvellous person, although I never met him, but I was a subscriber to UFO magazine, actually.
Yeah.
So you started going out and looking at these strange corpses.
Yeah.
How did you find them?
Well, this is a big difficulty, and still is, of course. How do you get to know the information? So I cogitated it for quite a while and thought an advert in the farming press could be a good plan.
Let's go to image 7 then.
So I was lucky enough to have a professor of pathology who was interested to assist me, and with Tony Fremont, Professor Tony Fremont.
And he's a professor of pathology?
At Manchester University, yes.
Okay, so he's well qualified to look at a corpse and say what happened, or at least what certainly didn't happen.
Yes, yeah. So I drafted this advert. Tony Fremont thought that was a very good way forward, as long as my name went on the advert and not his initially. So I was the contact. And the first one we did was in April 1998, which was the Farmer's Weekly. And it was £300 for a 1-week shot. So it was like 2 columns. And
well, you were probably competing with people like Massey Ferguson and ICI and Pfizer.
Well, people who were selling cattle and selling machinery. And so it was in the classified under what they call public notices. So Timothy Good, by the way, was the guy who very kindly stumped up the £300 to kick me off, which was very generous of him.
So you put your advert in, it was your first ad, obviously you did others because that was from the Farmer's Guardian, that's a different paper.
Yeah.
And what happened? You got calls?
I did, I was quite
surprised. Lots of calls?
Oh, in that 1-week shot, probably 30 to 35 calls.
35
yes.
calls?
And they were from as far as Cornwall, right up to the Isle of Lewis, Stornoway. It was a lady who had a deer. But anyway, she got cold feet.
Was it a domestic deer?
No.
It's a wild deer?
Wild deer, yes. But in there, perhaps they had some ownership of the deer, I don't know. But anyway, she got cold feet and didn't give me the full details and eventually rang off. So...
was it a red deer?
I don't actually know. It probably was, because lots of up there.
Yes, of course.
So anyway, as a result of that, I got... in 1 weekend, I had a round-robin trip to Shropshire, to 15 miles south-west of Shrewsbury, down the Hope Valley, picked up 4 lambs, and then I carried on to Oxfordshire, to near Witney, and picked up 2 more from a different farm.
So you had a car full of...
So I had 6...
deceased sheep?
Yes. I think in this day and age, the DEFRA wouldn't be very pleased about me carting 6 animals about, but never mind. My wife certainly wasn't very happy about it.
No, I'm sure she wasn't.
So I got them home and photographed them in the conservatory, put them in a bag in the garden shed overnight, and then took them to Tony Fremont the following day.
Who was in
Manchester University, So I think I used up all the formaldehyde they had in the whole department to stew and try and preserve these animals before they do any post-mortem.
Okay.
So that I was very fortunate.
All right, so these are the first ones that you've picked up, the first ones that you've had pathologically examined.
Yeah. And
what was the result of this examination?
Well, he confirmed. I mean, the trouble is, if you don't get, you need 48 hours, especially in this time of year, is your maximum to get the tissue into the laboratory, because of the decomposition starts and all the rest of it. So a lot of the edges of the wounds, which the first thing you're interested in, the attack of the bacteria immediately starts on the free edges, which is exposed to the air, the oxygen.
Right, of course.
So you couldn't really tell from some of the holes and tears whether it was done by teeth or a knife or a blade. Not on all of them. One with a rectal core which he determined, he described it as a discontinuity from the sphincter muscle to the stomach.
Perhaps we should describe the kinds of injuries that
yes.
are very, very common in these cases. And these are very common injuries, but they're the kind of injuries that cannot be explained by predation or normal causes, which is why the farmers, all these farmers, phoned you up, presumably.
Yes, because
there's a pattern, isn't there?
Yes.
So give me an idea of what these injuries are.
Well, if you'd like to start at the head end, perhaps we could have the graphic up. I don't know. That would help.
Which one was that?
It's it's 6, is it?
You want number 6 up?
6, yeah.
Okay, so this is the modus operandi.
Yes, because this is a good way, and Richard has done a superb job in producing this for the documentary.
Okay.
So they are, you get the jaw strip, or the flesh is taken from around the jaw and the mouth, often just round to the top. Sometimes takes the ear with it. And
this is very clean, isn't it? Right down to the bone. There's no blood.
No, and the bone is white and clean. There's not a scrap of muscle tissue or skin hanging on the bone.
And it would be very hard for a butcher, for instance, to do that.
Yes, yes.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. I did speak to a guy who worked in an abattoir, who actually contacted me down in South Wales, and he was intrigued because he'd seen the advert, I think, and he said even in an abattoir we would have to use high pressure steam and very hot to clean the bone to that extent in a short space of time.
But that would have then cooked the flesh that was next to it, wouldn't it?
Yes, I mean just to remove the flesh physically and then clean the bone to get it completely devoid of any scraps of flesh or tissue. It's not an easy thing to do.
All right, well, let's work our way around. This is a sheep. It's not just sheep, though, is it?
No. So.
Well, let's work around the sheep here and describe the different kinds of injuries that are very common. So there's this section of the muzzle, if you like, that's removed.
Often it goes round to the muzzle too, just a bit round the lips and mouth are taken. Sometimes it's a smaller cut.
And the tongue? The
tongue is often taken right from the back completely, but sometimes also a slit as an angle slightly, and perhaps the first centimetre, the tip is just removed. And again, apart from 1 or 2 exceptions, there's no bleeding. And then on the head, you often find 1 or both ears taken right down to the scalp.
Okay.
Then in the throat, often the throat's opened up, and organs within the throat are removed. And then working round to the body, main body, you can find holes in various places of all sizes, sometimes quite small.
And these holes have got very clean edges again.
Yes, again, they're very...
And the fur's been removed from around the edge?
Yes, it's almost like a surgeon preparing for surgery, where they would shave you, clean the skin, and the edge is also sealed, sort of sealed-like. Not torn and ripped, as you would expect a predator to do, like a bird or a crow. And often small organs, or often larger organs, are taken through quite small holes.
So all the organs might be missing, but they've gone through a very small opening.
Yes.
Okay, let's...
I've missed the neck area. Sometimes you will get 1 or 2 cases we found little holes in the ventral neck area of 1 or 2 millimetres, and a slight blood staining round there, which suggests it's a position where the animal is perhaps still alive at that point, and the heart's pumping the blood out through these incisions into the throat area.
We've got about a minute to describe the rest of the standard attacks on these animals, so let's work around the other.
Well, you get total decapitation sometimes, and very cleanly decapitated, often through the intravertebral, the IV joint in the vertebrae, but the heads are never found. You will often get a tail removed completely, or just leaving a small portion of the tail. At the back end, you will find genitals cleanly excised, both male and female.
A core, isn't there, usually?
And then in the rectum, there's a core. And I found in lambs, young lambs, it's consistently about 5.5 inches to 6, and maybe 25 or 20 millimetre diameter. And again, very neat. The bigger the animal, the larger the core size. Like a cow could be 14 inches or so.
So they might take the reproductive organs and the
part of the digestive
colon
system.
and
Yes, and often limbs are removed as well, and, portions of a limb. But
and again, very cleanly done.
Very clean, and that's missing.
Right. Sorry, sorry, we're going to go for a break now. If you'd like to text in your questions or comments to David Caton, why not do so now to 87778 with the word EDGE and then your text. See you back here very soon. Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, David Caton. Once again, a quick warning, there are some rather shocking images in this program, so you have been warned. David, we're talking about animal mutilations, inexplicable animal mutilations that can't be explained by predation or natural causes. I've got a question here. What range and types of animals have been found, cattle, domestic or both? Paul in Warrington. Welcome back, Paul. So, what's the answer to that?
Well, the answer to Paul is that, yes, certainly domestic animals, rabbits, dogs, cats, sea mammals, dolphins, seals.
What, dolphins?
Dolphins and seals, yes.
Well, they've been taken out of the ocean. How are their bodies found then? Floating in the ocean?
Well, on the beaches, certainly in Orkneys, some years ago, there was 40, all neatly decapitated, heads missing, of course, and each separation of the head was through the identical joint in the vertebrae, and the Scottish RSPCA said there was no damage to the side of the bone remaining where the cut was made. So if you can imagine a seal, even if you had it on the beach...
Is this seals or dolphins?
Seals. 40 seals.
40 seals.
In the Orkneys, although there have been dolphins off the French coast also found. How on earth, through the thick blubber and the flesh, could you, with a weapon, hit the same joint 40 times? Impossible. So you get birds, range of seabirds, usually decapitated. Mice even. Hedgehogs. I think we've got a picture of a hedgehog.
Let's go to image 8, shall we?
And a fox. So
can we have image 8?
So you find predators like fox and badger are also victims to the same problem. And then the other end of the scale, you've got worldwide. You've got the presumed brain is taken from the holes in the head. There were 40-odd pigs in the east of the country some years ago. All had the same hole in the head from one pig farm.
Let's have image 10, shall we?
And then the other one is, yes, there's some deer.
So these are 2 deer found together?
Yes, that was in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, this.
With the exact same wound in the head?
Yes.
How would you... First of all, you've got to catch your deer, haven't you?
Yes. Well, this is a massive problem, of course. If people were doing it, how on earth... I mean, farmers have said to me, I'll have a bet you can't go into my field and catch one of my animals, sheep, because they run away. Farmers get close to them by tempting with feed, and they get to know the farm. And
with a dog that rounds them up.
And the dogs, and he said, we have to use dogs even to round them up. So in the picture of night, how would you go into a field, capture the animal, restrain it, particularly if it's a strong animal, and even use a hefty beast and become quite aggressive, particularly if there's lambs in the field, to do the business? And then it's obviously done somewhere else, one presumes, because there's no mess or blood around. And then to return the carcass to the field, to risk being caught twice, is nonsense.
So here's another text. Steve in Middlesbrough says, is it high-tech weapons testing nocturnally done in remote areas?
I shouldn't think so, because if the government were doing some sort of covert testing, the easiest thing to do would be go to a market, buy some animals, or to the farm, do a deal, and take them somewhere like Porton Down in Wiltshire or wherever it might be, do the business, and then they would destroy the carcass. They would not return the injured and wounded, dead animal with the mutilations back to the owner. And either they committed theft and trespass in the process of doing it, and risk of exposing their programme. So that doesn't stack up at all.
OK, well, Lee in Bristol says, have there been reports on mutilations on big animals, such as lions?
I honestly don't know. When you consider what animals in Africa, I wouldn't mind betting there has been. Big animals, certainly bison in Canada, and they're huge things and very, very powerful beasts. And even the people who own the bisons are very cautious in approaching, particularly the bulls and the huge males, because they can do a lot of damage. So how would you capture a bison to restrain it to core its rectum or something like that? It's quite ridiculous.
Okay, there's some good text coming in here. Keep them coming, guys.
Okay.
Bob in Whitehead says, with similar mutilations in America, people have reported strange activity in the area, i.e. black helicopters. Has there been the same with British mutilations?
Occasionally, yes. Occasionally, yes.
Are they helicopters there?
Well, my guess is they're more likely to be special forces military helicopters who know from various sensing equipment, like radar, for example, and other things, that these objects are around doing the business. So they're keeping tabs on the mutilation, and their first objective then, through various other departments, is to retrieve that mutilated animal and remove it from public gaze. And the quicker they can do that, the better. It's been mooted that certain UFOs have the capability of morphing into what to be us would be a man-made craft, like a helicopter or a small light aircraft or something, but I don't think that happens very commonly, if at all. So, all right, well, this has obviously been going on for a very long time. I mean, how long ago, where's the first case that you know of in the UK? About, I think it's 1897.
So since 1897, this has been happening all over the UK.
Yeah, I mean, probably longer than that, just because media and communication and newspapers, and we had no television and radio, so getting the information, and then they probably wouldn't know what it was. You know, they just, farmers invariably found the animal.
Because they do lose animals anyway,
here?
don't they? They lose animals for all
and they write
kinds of
it off. They dig a hole and bury it, or take it to the drag hunt or whatever to dispose of it. It's a dead loss. So they're not bothered often of spending money with a vet, which is throwing good money after bad, to find out what's the
vet's
the cause
just going
of
to tell
death.
them it's dead.
Yeah, I mean, to conduct a post-mortem would be very, very expensive for the farmer to add on to the loss of his animal. So
there was another image which I found particularly interesting in here, and that was to do with some flies. Let's see if we can, let's see if we can find this image with the flies. Here we go, image 17. Can we have that one, please?
Right, this is
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a sheep or a lamb, is it?
Yes, it's a young. It's beyond. It's a lamb, but it's grown a bit. It's a half and half, I would say.
Okay, so nearly a sheep, and it's in the back of a pickup. And these flies that are dead, that have fallen out of its fur, these are blowflies.
Yes. So I haven't clapped eyes on this animal. I've only seen this image because this is from one of my APFU colleagues, Mike Freebury.
Okay.
And this is from Dartmoor. And the farmer got it in, didn't notice the flies, I don't think, when she picked it up. And only when she came to remove it from the trailer or the pickup did she see all the dead blowflies.
So not only did the animal die, but all its flies, which these are sort of blood-sucking, nasty things, aren't they? That's what the sheep dips are for.
They want to lay the eggs, and
to stop the blowflies, because they lay eggs in the flesh, don't they?
Yes, yeah.
So I think we've probably had enough of that one now, thank you.
So it suggests, of course, that there's something residual, unpleasant, left in the carcass, which is affecting, in that case, the blowflies, to kill them.
And there's other evidence, isn't there, of lack of natural predation. When the animal is dead, lying in the field, normally you'd get opportunistic predators like crows and ravens and foxes.
Yes,
and
have an easy meal by the dinner's left in the field for them. But very often predators won't touch the carcass, or farm dogs, we reported, won't approach close to the animal. They sense something is wrong about it, or to them there's a bad smell, literally, and they won't go near it, and they won't even eat the flesh.
Do you know of any people that have eaten any of these animals?
No. I would think most cases they get destroyed one way or another, so hopefully the meat would never get on the market. So
it does seem very strange, doesn't it, that there's some special quality about this meat.
So whether it's something that's been used to put the animal down, some sort of poison, or again we don't really know how they're killed. I mean, one of the young lambs I picked up from Shropshire, one of four, the fourth one, the farmer said, "There's nothing wrong, I can't see anything wrong with this one." And he said it was April, so it wasn't like the cold, they'd been out in the field. And when I examined it on the spot before I took it back to base, I found that they had two little holes each side of the head, between the eye and the ear, only a couple of millimetres. Professor Fremont looked at those, and his first impression was they were 2.2 pellet,
from an air
bullet
gun.
from an air gun, because they were that sort of size. And he was surprised to find, when he peeled the skin away, they didn't even touch the bone. There was no even indentation or damage to the bone. So that led me to believe it was either something attached to the head to kill the animal.
Some sort of like the things they use that stun the animals that they use in slaughterhouses. They put two metal things on their head, don't they, with a higher voltage charge in them?
Yeah, I believe so. There's various ways of killing them, I believe. But these were so small, so I thought, well, what technology is being used there?
So what killed that animal then?
Well, that's $64,000.
Well, the pathologist couldn't.
No. Okay, we didn't have funds. He wasn't charging me megabucks to do this work at all.
No.
And so we hadn't the funds to do any toxology to find out if there was anything actually in the system, injected through these little holes.
Okay, so these have been happening since 1890 something, at least, that we know of.
Yeah, probably longer.
Now, I'm sure, and considering that just one advert raised you, 30 plus farmers who had this happen to them, so it's incredibly common, because these are the ones who can be bothered to phone, who've read the advert and can be bothered to phone you.
Yeah.
So what is the government doing about it? I mean, the government surely must be aware. Can you want to tell me about that?
Well, they certainly are, because the official government body before it was DEFRA was MAF.
That was the Ministry of Agricultural Fisheries and Food.
That's correct, yes. And 3 weeks after the Farmers Weekly advert went in, actually, I received on my mobile a rather unpleasant, bullish call from a lady who said she was speaking from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries from Preston. She didn't identify herself by name or the location of the MAF premises in Preston. I found that later with the help of BT. And her first question, established it was me on the phone, shook me rigid, because she said, is this to do with the aliens, not that we know anything about it?
Really?
Yes, she did.
She said, is this to do with the aliens?
And then quickly followed up by, not that we know anything about it. She made the comment, but then became quite defensive about it.
And that was an official government call?
Yes, right.
That's rather interesting,
It certainly is. And then she demanded to name the professor of pathology, which I declined to give her, because we hadn't released Tony's name at that time. She demanded my address, which I gave her. She then berated the farmers. They have no right to give up dead animal carcasses to the likes of you, Mr. Caton, for unofficial experimentation, were her words. So I said, well, hang on. If a farmer wants to find out what caused his animal to die and pays for a post-mortem, what's wrong with that? And her response to that was, because of BSE. So I said, oh, bear in mind, this is 1998. So I said, are you telling me we've got BSE problems with sheep? Well, she went a bit quiet for a moment.
So there is a link to scrapie, isn't there, which is a sheep disease?
Yes, I mean, at the time, there was no government announcement that there could be a problem with sheep. It was all cattle prior to that. We hadn't had the last bad foot and mouth at the time.
No.
She said they're supposed to burn and incinerate the carcasses within 48 hours. Now, I expected to get a stiff letter to follow up that phone call. Nothing. I rang the farmers back who I retrieved the animals from and said, have you had this official written notification from the MAF to say this is what you should do? They said no. So they were definitely, she was trying to bully me and put me off investigating what I was investigating.
And has MAF and its successor, DEFRA, bullied farmers?
Yes.
Describe some of that.
Yes, well, there's one case. This was in Shropshire, interestingly, and this chap had 3 horses in the field. One was mutilated with the classic mutilations, rectal core, genitals, tongue out, jaw strip. One was missing altogether, and the 3rd horse was traumatised. Now, the farmer didn't invite the MAF to come onto his premises to remove his horse, so he assumed the vets had tipped them off. 2 vehicles appear, a box van and a car, a man and a woman, and the farmer was a bit mystified because they never even examined the animal to look at the injuries. They were hell-bent on winching it up into this truck. So he started asking questions while they were doing this, and he said, what about my missing horse? And her response to him was, you don't want to know about that, that's government business. Well, the farmer was getting a bit brassed off with her attitude, and he said, oh, I'm going to write to Tony Blair about this. And she said, you know, very officiously and with great confidence, that will do no good whatsoever. And then later on, as they were departing, she threatened him directly in the way of saying, you mustn't speak to the media or anybody about this. And the term was, otherwise you will find farming very difficult, which the farmer rightly interpreted, I guess, to meaning we'll review your government subsidies, which could dangerously affect his livelihood. And then, that's the stick. The carrot is, we'll send you a compensation cheque for the loss of animal, which they never get. So I knew 2 cases where that's happened and they never get the cheque, because that would be signed by 2.
And there would be a paper trail then?
A paper trail, yeah.
So these people, they flash their MAF cards or DEFRA cards
yes.
and say who they are, and presumably they look fairly official.
Yes.
Are they men in black?
No, I don't know. I think
Men in brown overalls?
Probably more like white overalls. I always think coveralls doing what they're doing, but mode of dress wasn't discussed.
And have you had any contact from DEFRA since then, or MAF?
No, well, sort of indirectly. The BBC in Manchester, we did a little short thing some years ago in '99.
David, I'm sorry to cut you off then.
That's okay.
We're going to go for our second break now.
Okay.
Once again, if you'd like to text in your questions or comments, please do so now. Just text 87778 with the word EDGE, and then your text, and we'll see you back here soon. Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, David Caton, and we now also have Richard D. Hall, the man you can't keep off this show. So, Richard, welcome.
Hello, Theo. Hello, David.
Hello, Richard. Hello.
Good to see you again. Now, I know that you've made a programme that we're showing after this show about these animal mutilations. It's called Silent Killers. We've got an hour, haven't we, after the show?
That's right.
And then the full programme is being shown on Friday, I believe. No, Tuesday next week.
Yeah, that's right.
Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. Just before the break, David, we were talking about the way that MAF and DEFRA, the government agencies, deal with animal mutilations in the UK, but you had some other examples from other countries that you wanted to talk about quickly.
Yes, well, one of our ex-APFU chaps, who married an Argentinian lady, spends 3 months a year in Argentina. So he said, right, I will keep an eye out. And as it happened in 2002, 2003, Argentina had a massive wave of mutilations.
Let's go to picture 11, can we?
Right.
Picture 11?
Yes. So this cow, they travelled some distance from where they were specifically to look at it. They were there within 48 hours of it being killed.
Yeah.
Had a typical jaw strip, as you can see.
Yeah, this has got the strip removed, of flesh removed, right down to the white bone.
Yeah. The teeth were falling out. The vet came with police.
Let's go to 12 and 13. We'll go to 12 and 13 as well, please.
And here you got the vet with the police standby. He opened the body up and was amazed to find it was totally empty. Even the brain was missing, and the only opening, apart from its mouth, was a 14-inch rectal cord. So the assumption was all the organs from brain had gone out to the back end.
And including the brain?
Yeah.
So they must use some sort of giant vacuum cleaner.
It's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling how.
Well, it was for the cow.
It certainly was. And it also was decomposing very rapidly. And here you can see the hide was falling off the skin very rapidly in large chunks.
Yes.
The farm dog wouldn't go near it again. So there were flies, odd flies about. And also one of the teats was cut. The tip of one of the teats was missing. And
can we go to image 14 and 15 as well? This is how the press deals with it in Argentina.
Which was very refreshing, because the massive coverage, TV, newspapers, and even a diagram of the common modus operandi injuries, the media even put up there on a diagram on the cow.
Which is very similar to the Richard D. Hall image we showed earlier.
So,
only this time it's a cow.
Yeah. The day it dawns when our British media give this sort of coverage to the mutilations in the UK, I'll eat my hat. I'm saying that because I don't wear hats.
You don't wear any hats. So, OK, Richard, I'm going to get you a bit more into the room here then. I know what you're going to say, obviously, but it isn't big cats.
Yeah, I think we've got to be very careful before we, just come out and say blanket, it's a UFO phenomenon, because I think some people will just turn their back on the subject if you say that. I think what you have to do is present first present all of the evidence in detail,
Yeah.
and then consider every single possible explanation. And that's what I've aimed to do in the documentary, because we have to be objective about it, we have to be cool-headed about it, and people, you know, when you mention UFOs, you know, a lot of people, they switch off, and you know, we can't have that, because this is something which is at the highest level in government and is being covered up. And we reveal evidence in the documentary that it's being covered up. And
by the government.
Yes, and we can speculate as to, you know, why they're covering it up, and that's areas where, you know, we don't exactly know. But I'm fairly certain, from having met David and the other members of the APFU and the evidence that they've shown me, that now when I say government, I don't mean the chocolate fire guards that sit on the green seats in Parliament. I mean certain sections of the British government, agencies who are operating possibly within DEFRA, this kind of thing.
Okay. We will explore a bit more of the UFO side of things, but there is a really good question that's coming here from Tim in Somerset. Have any animals survived for any time with partial mutilations, perhaps after a disturbed attack?
Yes.
And I think you do have an example of that, don't you, David?
Yes, we had a big case in 2003, was it? Down in Gloucestershire on the Severn Estuary, near Lydney and Chepstow. There was 35 sheep attacked on a filthy wet night in a very difficult field, wind blowing a gale, and the farmer got to them, brought them into the yard, and one or two were still alive. In fact, some died sometime afterwards, so they had this massive split down the nose, the head about 1/4 inch wide, and the poor animal was still having to breathe through the top of the nasal bone.
And they all had the same injury?
No, they were all it was all head damage, there was nothing else. And he had to shoot it 3 times to put it out of his misery, this poor ewe.
With a shotgun?
Yes. So they don't all die instantly, and sometimes we've seen the odd tongue cut where it's bleeding, so obviously the animal's still alive. But so
one thing you haven't touched on yet is the fact that on no occasion has any human ever been seen or caught in any of these incidents or arrested. So no one's been arrested or even seen.
And
so
there's been no tracks, no footprints?
There's been incidents where farmers have you know, been so annoyed at this problem that they've staked out a field at night where this activity is going on, and they've even invested in infrared equipment which will trigger cameras. Okay, so they'll set the infrared equipment above the level of the sheep. They staked them out, stayed up all night.
with shotguns.
With shotguns.
Yeah.
The equipment's triggered, and they see nothing, and then in the morning, yards from where they were, mutilated sheep. So it's extremely covert, whatever's doing it.
Okay, I've got another really good question here that I think you should answer, Richard. This is from Simon in Cardiff, and he says, I saw a documentary once that highlighted cases of human mutilation. Is this something you are aware of?
Yes, it's something I'm aware of, and it's a very controversial area. There's less evidence, I have to say, that it has happened to humans, but I know of 2 contacts that claim that this has gone on in the UK. Now, I haven't been able to corroborate or find out further evidence that what these people say is true, but it's something that I'm continuing to investigate.
And you do tackle it at the end of your...
Yes.
Which won't be on tonight, will it? I don't think it'll be on the Tuesday.
Yeah. Now, we need to bear in mind that the whole ET phenomena, some people might find it difficult to believe that there's possibly more than one type of extraterrestrial. And we don't think that if it is ET, that they're all of that nature. So that's something that...
They're all doing strange things to animals.
Yeah.
Can we speculate what it is? Why do they want these bits? They don't want the meat, do they? They're not taking the prime meat for eating, clearly. No. They're taking reproductive organs, you know, the descending colon and the tongue, although that is considered a delicacy in some cultures.
Yes.
The best explanation that I've come across, Phil Hoyle of the APFU sent me some documents recently, and in one of those, for me, that was the best explanation, that whoever's doing it is fitting these animals with some kind of tracking device in the ear. So at some point, then injecting them with some kind of virus. Okay, they're then left for however many months.
Oh,
they're then found again through this implant, whatever it might be, where they grow antibodies inside their blood and their body systems. So the animals
medical science does that here,
yes,
doesn't it?
yes. Horses, I believe, are used to provide a vaccine for, I can't remember which disease it is.
Polio or something.
Yeah, something like that. So they then can find the animal that they've injected with whatever it was, who's then developed antibodies. Then they remove all of the blood, which happens in these cases, and then separate the virus from the antibodies, and then whoever's doing it possibly then has a use for what's left.
So they're using these animals to incubate vaccines?
Yes. Now that would then explain possibly why the tongue's cut off, because they cut the tongue off and test the tissue of the tongue before they then go and take out all of the blood to see if it's what they want, and the ear is possibly being fitted with a tracking device like at some time beforehand. Now, I'm not saying that that's what it is, but that's the best explanation for me. And you know, you say, well, it's therefore it's pharmaceuticals or it's government or whatever. If it's government, how come no farmers actually shot anyone with a shotgun doing this? You know,
yeah, because if they took these animals away out of the field in order to exsanguinate them, take all the blood out, because they never find the blood in the field, do they? Then why would they bother putting them back?
Yeah.
They wouldn't, would they?
Yeah, exactly. And there's no explanation as to how they actually managed to remove all of the blood. That's explained in the documentary.
All right, one of the questions I had earlier, which is now scrolled off the screen, was, are there hotspots for this?
I was going to bring that up. I'll let David explain that one.
I think there is, just because, I mean, it's hard to be 100% sure, because your information is tempered by what you've got from farmers responding. So you might falsely think there's a hotspot because you've been to half a dozen farms within 10 or 15 square miles. But on balance, I would guess there is hotspots.
But have you done research? Wasn't there some links that you made with certain areas?
Well, Mike Freebury, who's been investigating the Dartmoor cases, I mean, he has, I don't know how many cases, is it 18 or more?
It's 18 attacks and nearly 70 sheep were killed, all in 30 months.
Within half a mile, is it?
A quarter square mile of Dartmoor, east of Tavistock.
Are there any sheep left?
You might wonder, doesn't it?
So if it's a predatory animal, then why is it? In fact, one of them was actually caught in a field a few miles away and then deposited where all the other sheep were found initially.
Which suggests the
perpetrators... So put it back in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But is it, well, okay, there are supposed to be big cats on Dartmoor, aren't there? You know, like black jaguars or...
Yeah, and I had a...
I see you've got a picture of one.
I've got a picture of one here because somebody who watched my documentary actually rang me up and said, oh, well, there's been a case local to you. So this was in a place called Prudder in Northumberland. This was just a few weeks ago. And I've got this is the Hexham Courant it was in, and there's a picture of a black cat here. Yes. And it says that, you know, that the farmer was completely mystified, all the internal organs had been removed, and we do have a photograph of that. So, and the police came along and said, oh, well, it's a black cat. We saw a black cat over in you know, another area of Northumberland, so that's obviously what it is. So they put a picture of a black cat. Warrants come and take it away, and then nothing else is spoken of it. And all of the public then just think, oh, well, it's a black cat.
But if it was a black cat, it wouldn't have attacked in the way that these animals have all been attacked, would it? It couldn't possibly...
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a photograph of that. I actually went to the farm...
It's 5A.
5A, can we have 5A?
The farmer had taken, because he thought it was so bizarre, he'd never seen anything like it, he took 2 photographs with his mobile phone.
And this is a calf, is it?
Yeah, calf,
so if it was a predator, a black cat, normally what they would do is attack the throat, and there would be blood around the throat. Incidentally, there was another calf, which he doesn't have a photograph of, which had its ear cut off. So
just 2 days before.
2 days before that one. So it was an identical injuries to that one 2 days before. So it must have been a very hungry cat.
In fact, it's just lying next to the one off the picture. But
Oh, right, okay.
But and that's just 3 miles from one of my first cases in Whittenstall.
Okay, well, we've got 2 minutes to describe what's doing this, Richard.
Well,
you know about all the different alien species.
Well, I'm not. There's no way I'm going to sit on camera and say what I think's doing this, because I don't know. All I know is that there is indisputable evidence which proves it's not predators, and it's probably not a government project.
It's not known predators.
Not cults.
And this is the key thing. The government clearly know a lot more than David and the APFU.
Well, like the MAF said to him, is it about the aliens?
Yes, that shook me rigid. I mean, she actually came out, and I said to her, I challenged her, I said, why did you, going back in the conversation, why did you mention at the start of the phone call, you mentioned aliens? And she hesitated, thinking, oh, something I saw on television. Well, I knew 100% sure there was nothing on the 5 terrestrial channels, maybe in America, possibly, on cattle. And I pressed her which the programme was. She said, oh, it was some documentary. I said, oh, what's the title? And she thought, oh, it was already on when I came in the living room, so she was trying to think on her feet and come up with an answer. I think she was annoyed, really, that I was questioning her, and sorry afterwards that she even mentioned the word in the first place.
There was a proposal from a BBC producer to make a programme very similar to the one I've made, which was knocked back. That was, how many years ago was that? In 2003 or something like that?
Yes, yeah.
So, well, I suspect they probably...
So they looked at it, and then, for whatever reason, we're not making a documentary about that.
Yeah. Even the farming press, even though I knew I would get phone calls from the editorial desk, both from the Farmer's Guardian and the Farmer's Weekly. All excited journalists would do a story, and then the editors knocked it back again because this was going to disturb and worry their readership. And my argument to the features editor of the Farmer's Weekly, you're supposed to provide backup and support for the farming industry. You should be reporting on this as a proper article to get response. And
David, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. Thank you to everyone for watching our show, and for those who texted. And thanks to my very special guest, David Caton, and of course, Richard D. Hall. Stay tuned now and watch the first hour of the special report on this subject called Silent Killers by Richard. The full programme will be aired on Tuesday at 8 p.m. If the images in this show have sickened you to your stomach, please tell all your friends. Next week, we'll be back with yet another exciting show that might even change your life. Until then, remember, they're watching you, watching us, watching them. Cheerio. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers. Tonight's show is sadly just 1 hour long, but it is live. So if you have any questions for my guest during the show, text them to 87778 with the word EDGE, a space, and then your name, location, and your message, and we'll try to pick up on any that really hit the mark. They're all charged at standard rate, so why not get texting? In tonight's show, I'll be talking with a special guest who is the author of Aliens Before Gentlemen, A Guide to the Future, the editor of website www.richplanet.net, and following the success of his first series of programs on this channel, also called richplanet.net, he has, as you will know if you were watching this channel over the past hour, created a second series taking his ideas on alien visitation even further. He is author, researcher and filmmaker Richard D. Hall. What a show we've got tonight. Richard, welcome.
Welcome, Theo, and thank you very much for having me back on the show.
Yeah, your second time you've been on. Blimey. So you've got a new series.
That's right, yeah.
I think we better start by talking about your new series.
Yeah, sure. I thought for this series that I would ask the experts their opinions, and I contacted several ufologists around Britain, and I got responses from 3. And the first person that I went to interview for the series is called Gary Heseltine.
Right.
Now, Gary Heseltine is a detective constable, and he has been putting together a database which features police UFO sightings.
Right.
And that database goes back to sightings from 1901 and involves over 700 British police officers. And the thing I would say about that particular database is that when you consider police officers in terms of what they do, their job is to record evidence accurately. And so I think that database is called the PRUFOS database, police reporting of UFO sightings. Look it up on the internet. It's a very significant piece of work.
And I suppose, yeah, policemen would probably be fairly credible if they see something. They're not likely to be drunk, for instance, are they?
Exactly. My brother's a police officer, and, you know, they're never off duty. You know, if they see something, they're very vigilant people. So it's highly credible, trained witnesses. The second person that I went to interview is called David Boyle. Now, he runs a very interesting exhibition in Blackpool, which is it's near the seafront in Blackpool. It's called The Workings of the Universe, or the Exhibition of the Workings of the Universe. And in that he had...
It's a very big remit, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very interesting. He has things like a reenactment of the Roswell UFO crash with the alien bodies lying around it and sort of waxwork dummies of supposed aliens. It's extremely interesting. And the third person I went to interview was the world-renowned and highly respected ufologist Timothy Good, who is a best-selling author and really is one of the world's top authorities on UFOs. And it was an honor for me to go and meet him. You know, showed me his collection of UFO books, and it was like walking into a library. You know, I didn't even realize there were so many books had been written on UFOs, and then all of his research material as well could fill another library. But he's a very interesting man, and it was an honor for me to meet him. And I think we've got some clips of the three people that I interviewed.
Shall we show a clip which is, I think, the trailer of your new series?
Yeah.
Shall we watch that first? That's probably clip 1 with a bit of luck. Can we watch that?
A new series of richplanet.net is coming to Edge Media Television. A down-to-earth, no-nonsense expose of the facts about aliens and UFOs. So the Americans are in control of elements within the British government without the permission of our Prime Minister?
Definitely.
There is a decision from somebody very high up to have a broad policy of downplaying the subject.
And of course these people in many cases go through initiation stages where parts of the true workings of the universe are explained to them.
Full disclosure would be disastrous on several fronts.
I think that we are moving closer to a major decision.
And we'll suddenly realise the illusion that we've all lived in. And we'll say enough's enough, no more. And people will not follow the lead of the governments.
Let's just take a look at the abduction phenomenon, for starters.
Small creatures that he describes as lamp heads, bulb heads, 3 to 4 feet high. We're putting things on his legs.
The remnants of their earlier civilizations, which were far more technologically advanced, coming from different planets, to travel to here, are still all over the planet.
What is the true purpose?
Join the campaign to end the lies and secrecy being perpetrated by the unelected, invisible rulers of planet Earth.
Right, well that was a clip of those people you were just talking about. I mean,
right.
This is what in the first programme, is it? These interviews, or does
they're
this spread across the series?
throughout the entire 6 half-hour programmes. Yeah. And the programmes cover everything from the technology of UFOs, the UFO cover-up, UFO disclosure. So it looks at whether the people are going to be told the truth about UFOs, the Illuminati, abduction. So it's quite wide-ranging.
So how did the Illuminati come into all of this then?
Well, there are lots of theories about the Illuminati, and the theory goes that the world is not actually run by our democratic governments, that people who are members of secret societies meet behind closed doors and influence both sides of governments. So it's, you know, the theory goes that the world's governments have been subverted by a small group of very powerful people, and that's basically the basis of the Illuminati. Now, how far it goes, I wouldn't like to say, but one of the programs covers that in my series, which is very interesting.
Okay, I've got a text in now. Oh, somebody's saying that the sound's not good. Brenda in Hull. Well, I don't know whether we've managed to fix that yet, have we? I've got people crawling around on the studio floor, so it's possible that we haven't quite fixed it. I've also got a text here from Paul in Warrington saying, do you know if of Steven Spielberg having been given the Roswell film, which was supposed to be included in a film, Close Encounters 2? Paul in Warrington said that. So have you heard of that?
No, I haven't heard that, unfortunately.
Have you even heard of Close Encounters 2?
I haven't. I've heard Close Encounters of the Third Kind, yeah. But if I can just touch on what brings me to the subject of ufology, or what keeps me in the subject of ufology. Once you start to unpick the information that's available about UFOs, it becomes blatantly obvious if you spend some time looking at the evidence that's available that UFOs are real and they are driven by extraterrestrials. There's no doubt in my mind that that is the case. However, when you dig a little bit further, you find that there is information and secrets even more wide-ranging than that I believe is being covered up by I do not know who. It's been withheld from the human race. And I've listed some of those, what I call secrets, in my series, and I think we've got a clip which lists what I believe to be
30 secrets.
30 secrets, yeah.
Okay, should we go to that clip then, please?
I'm going to list 30 secrets and split them into 3 categories: definite, probable, and possible. These are my own personal beliefs at this point in time, and I don't expect everyone to agree with them. I believe that many of these secrets have been gleaned from our extraterrestrial visitors. Definite secrets include technology to go to the stars, including anti-gravity propulsion, free energy technology, which is 100% clean, wireless transmission of power, magnetic beam technology, underground bases throughout the world, some of which are shared with ETs, structures and bases on the far side of the moon, detailed knowledge of over 50 types of extraterrestrial, knowledge about ET societies, including that some run without money, motives and ideologies of ET races, and knowledge of the planets from which ETs originate. Probable secrets include knowledge of man's true genetic and historic origins, and whether our genetics have been manipulated in the past, the purpose of the alien abduction program, knowledge about the structures on Mars, knowledge of when ET races have visited Earth throughout our history, whether ET races believe in a universal God, knowledge of previously advanced civilizations which have lived on Earth, information on Earth's disasters, including floods and wars, time travel or the ability to view the future, remote viewing, and the unified theory of physics, including knowledge of the so-called Higgs boson. And finally, possible secrets include knowledge of whether human beings have a spirit, what a spirit is in scientific terms, knowledge of whether human beings reincarnate when our physical body dies, a cure for AIDS, a cure for cancer, knowledge of who built the pyramids and what the real purpose was, knowledge of the inner workings of the atom and whether the atom itself can cease to be tangible in our known universe by changing its vibrational state, how the universe manifested itself, whether there are other universes, and finally, whether there is a reason for 95% of our DNA being seemingly redundant. I'm going to list.
Well, that was quite a list, wasn't it?
It certainly is.
Or 3 lists.
And if you consider even if half of those secrets are being kept, then it's a crime that they're being kept from the human race, because scientists, philosophers, and ordinary people have tried to find answers to those questions for hundreds of years. And, you know, if I could find the answer to half of those questions when I die, I'll die happy.
Well, you must have, because of the researches you've done, you must have some clues about some of those answers, like the structures on Mars, for instance.
Yes.
You must have an opinion.
Yeah, I believe there are structures on Mars, but I believe it's kept well secret.
Well, there's lots of things on the internet, not just the mountains at Cydonia, the face and the pyramids there and all that stuff,
but the
lots of other stuff.
There haven't been any what I would call conclusive photographs released of Mars. There's the 5-sided pyramid, which, you know, you could say it's a natural structure, but it certainly looks very suspicious to me. And I would say that there are definitely structures on the far side of the moon, and that comes from Carl Wolf's.
We're on the moon now.
Yeah, that comes from Carl Wolf's testimony in the Disclosure Project. And who built those structures, that's anybody's guess.
What amazes me is that these official photographs from Mars, apart from the ones from the Mars rovers, they're also they're so fuzzy and unclear, and yet we know they've got the ability to have cameras in orbit. If you've got to spend all that money getting a camera in orbit around Mars, you'd think you'd send one with a decent lens.
Yeah, well, the ones from the rover are extremely high definition.
But the colour's all wrong on those, isn't it? They don't
think so?
register. Well, apparently I've read that they deliberately designed not to register anything green.
the thing that I would bear in mind whenever I look at a NASA photograph is the fact that that photograph has passed through NASA and they can doctor it and do whatever they want with it. I mean, they actually employ people in NASA to airbrush UFOs out of their photographs, you know, before they're released to the public.
Well, you don't have evidence of that, do you?
Yeah, there's one of the Disclosure Project witnesses actually stated that, a highly reliable, credible witness. I mean, we could touch on the government release of the files which occurred last week.
There was one, wasn't there? Last
yeah, there was
MOD files.
another one. Yeah, the government over a 3-year period have been releasing their sightings from the public that report these sightings to the MOD, and it's claimed in the papers that these are secret documents. They're not secret documents. They're publicly available, but they've released them in batches, and it generated the typical media response, which I find very disappointing. And I've got an article here which is from Monday's Daily Mail. Aliens, no, just the Pentagon playing with its latest toys. So they're trying to suggest that the American stealth bomber was being tested over British airspace without the permission of the MOD, and they're saying that that was responsible possibly for UFO sightings. I find that very difficult to believe.
Well, I find it very difficult to believe that the Americans would fly it over here without telling the MOD.
Yeah, especially in
case we shut it down.
Well, exactly, in light of Nick Pope's recent statement that our forces had a policy to shoot down UFOs if they saw one. And the Sunday Times has a very similar article. In fact, it's almost identical, which suggests to me that neither of these journalists have actually read the documents, that they've just taken the executive overview given by the National Archives. They've just copied the same information. And this one finishes with kind of a debunking story. It says, a bright cigar-shaped object moving very slowly and making little or no sound. An intelligence analyst recorded that the craft was almost certainly a brightly illuminated airship advertising the new Ford Mondeo. Now, you see, ufologists know that at least 95% of UFO sightings are explicable and are not UFOs. And it's that small percentage.
Richard, I'm sorry to butt in here, but we are going for a break now. If you'd like to text in your questions or comments for Richard D. Hall, why not do so now to 87778 with the word EDGE and then your text. See you very soon. Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, Richard D. Hall. Just before the break, Richard, we were talking about some of the press coverage of the recent MOD revelations, and you were talking about Sunday Times.
Yeah, the Sunday Times, and most of the major newspapers. The basic point is that anybody who was to read this article who didn't have a great deal of knowledge about UFOs would come away from that 100% believing that there's nothing to it. That's my point.
That it's all rubbish.
Yeah, that it's all rubbish. And I believe that this is a broad policy from high up to downplay the UFO situation, because they do not want the mass of humanity to know about the information on UFOs.
Why do you think that is, then?
Well, that's quite a difficult question to answer, and I do address it in the series, and I would advise people to watch the programme next week. Timothy Good comes up with some extremely interesting ideas on what is the cause of the cover-up to do with alien abduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. So you wanted to talk about, well, actually this. This is a little, I have to admit, it's a plastic flying saucer that landed on my desk during the break. So, Richard, you wanted to tell us about this a little bit?
Sure, yeah, this is just a little model UFO that I've got, and I'm going to use it to try and explain to you how anti-gravity works, how anti-gravity UFOs work.
Okay.
Now, before I start, I need to first explain a little bit about the characteristics of UFO sightings. Now, UFOs on radar are often seen to go through 90-degree angles to change their direction almost instantaneously, or from a standing start on a single radar sweep, they'll be 200 miles away. So they can produce changes in direction and acceleration, which, if performed by a conventional aircraft, would basically kill the occupants inside, because they wouldn't be able to go through such changes in direction.
And they would shake the plane apart probably as well, wouldn't they?
It would, yeah. Now, this isn't just a few people that have reported this kind of activity. You know, there are many radar operators who report this, and thousands of pilots have also reported this characteristic movement. Now, in order to explain why they move in that way, we need to just understand a little bit about gravity. Now, I explained in my last series on UFOs how the Earth, if we consider the Earth is in a gravity well. So if you think of it in a well, the gradient on the well is representative of the attraction of the Earth to all other objects. Okay, so the Earth attracts other objects because it's essentially in a well.
Like the moon?
Like the moon. The moon is also in its own gravity well. Anything which has large mass exhibits a gravity well which attracts mass towards it.
But the moon is in our gravity well, isn't it?
Well, it's in its own gravity well, and you know, the Earth is in the moon is in the Earth's gravity well, which is effectively rolling round the edge of the Earth's gravity well, which is why it's in orbit.
So it's like a pocket of a snooker table or something. And it's
Exactly. Now, if you were able to produce a gravity well which was somewhere away from the Earth, another piece of gravity which would have the same effect, if you were to place an object in between the Earth and that piece of gravity, or that other gravity well, okay, you could get the two to balance out. So the object would essentially just stay in midair. And this is how anti-gravity works. Anti-gravity really is probably not the right term. I would use the word other gravity. So if you imagine the UFO is here, and the Earth is here, okay, and it generates a gravity well. Now I'll just switch on the anti-gravity drive. Okay, there we go.
Oh my goodness,
now,
it lights up.
So the gravity well that the UFO is generating is represented by this black disk. Okay? So the Earth's down here. So under normal circumstances, the UFO would just fall to the Earth, as any other object would. But when it generates this gravity well here, okay, the gravity well is pulling the UFO up in equilibrium to what it's been pulled down by the Earth. So now, physicists listening would say, no, you can't generate a gravity well, that's impossible. The only way to generate a gravity well is by having a large mass. Now, that's because mainstream physicists have been brainwashed by mainstream science. You can generate a gravity well, and UFOs do that by harnessing massive quantities of energy. And how the craft move is that they just reposition this gravity well. So they move it to the left, it will move to the left, and the right, and it will move to the right. Now,
and they can adjust how powerful their gravity well is, can they?
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Because if they were to increase the intensity of this gravity well, the UFO, would, or the depth of the gravity well, the UFO would shoot off at incredible speed.
So they can make that, they can basically, well, the craft falls into...
Exactly. It's like it's falling down a hill.
Yeah.
Now, this was observed at O'Hare International Airport in 2006.
Chicago, is it?
I think so.
O'Hare? I think
O'Hare,
it is, yeah.
Now, so when it departed vertically upwards, it actually cut a perfect circle in the clouds. Now, the key point to note about...
well, before it hit the clouds, you mean?
Well, as it cut through the clouds, there was just, after it had gone, there was a perfect cylinder through the clouds where there was no cloud left. The key point to note here is that, let's say the UFO positions its gravity well here, and then it turns it up, so it accelerates in that direction, and then it switches that gravity well to over here. Okay, the craft would instantaneously change direction like that, and because it's falling through a gravity field the whole time, the occupants would be weightless throughout, and any physicist will tell you that. The only point where the physicist might disagree with you is whether you can generate a gravity well, but they will tell you that the occupants could be in there, sitting, eating their dinner, repositioning the gravity well, and the craft can be going through the most phenomenal accelerations and speeds.
And their peas wouldn't roll off their forks?
Exactly.
Or their mashed potato?
Exactly. Now, if we accept what I've just said, the physicist would say, well, that would require a huge quantity of energy. So there's no doubt in my mind that UFOs are powered by an advanced power system, either an advanced form of nuclear power, possibly nuclear fusion, or antimatter nuclear power, or zero-point energy. These are proposed power systems that, you know, they're not using jet engines or diesel engines. You know, they don't make any noise. It has to be some kind of advanced power. Now, if we then accept that, and then accept that the Americans have recovered many of these craft and taken them apart and analysed them with a fine-tooth comb.
Right.
I believe they know about this technology. They know about advanced energy technology, which they are keeping from the world, which could solve the energy crisis and get us off fossil fuels. But there are people with vested interest in fossil fuels that prevent that type of energy technology being released into the world. And that's why I believe the UFO subject needs to be politicized, because we need this technology to basically save the Earth. That's my genuine view.
Well, do you think that global warming is a real issue? I understood that you didn't.
Well,
am I wrong?
Global warming, I would rename global warming. I would call it the CO2 problem, because people are starting to say that CO2 does not cause warming. Now, one thing is definite. The concentration of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere has gone up by 40% in the last 300 years. No one will dispute that. Now, the air around the Earth is what keeps us all alive, and carbon dioxide is one of the 3 constituent gases. And that gas, because of the Industrial Revolution, has increased in 40%. It's way, way higher than any time over the last 500,000 years. Now, whether that causes global warming or not, I don't think that's a good thing, to be messing, 40%. That's a very important gas in the Earth's atmosphere, and it's rising. So whether it causes global warming, I don't know. I think that's very difficult to prove, to actually prove a link. And this is what people are using as an well, no, you can't prove that it's causing global warming. So I think it should be renamed the CO2 problem.
You think there is a CO2? You don't think it's sunspot activity or, crossing the plane of the Milky Way or anything like that?
Yeah, I think there could be other reasons why the Earth's temperature changes. I mean,
and it has in the past changed much more than it's changing now.
Yeah.
We've had, in the 16th century, we had a mini ice age where they had ice fairs on the Thames.
That's right.
Every winter, and we've had hot periods where London was, semi-tropical, and there were dinosaurs in the South Pole once.
I mean, you're talking about highly complex systems which can't be modelled on any computer due to the size and complexity and all of the different factors involved. One thing is for sure, that the CO2 concentration does follow temperature over, hundreds of thousands of years. It's whether the CO2 concentration is going to cause global warming. But what I would say is that it's bad to have all of this gas that we've created artificially into our atmosphere. The air keeps us alive. And even if global warming wasn't true, if CO2 continued to rise eventually, because CO2 is poisonous to humans, we would die if we continued pumping CO2
We've got a picture for that, haven't we? We've got this picture 2, I believe it is.
Yeah, we've got a few graphs.
Should we have a look at those graphs? Can we have those up? Somebody, somewhere?
Yeah, this shows approximately the last 500,000 years, and each of those cycles represents an ice age. And the green line there is the concentration of CO2. And you can see at the very right-hand side of the graph that it's basically 40% higher than at any point in the last 500,000 years. And another thing, if you look carefully at that graph, is you can see that the temperature lags behind the CO2 by about 1,500 years. Now, that would suggest that temperature follows CO2 concentration, but it doesn't necessarily prove that it does. No. So, I would... people who say that global warming is a con, and it's, I would be open to just debate that. I wouldn't know whether it is or not, but I know that CO2 can't be good for the planet.
Well, Paul in Warrington again says global warming is an Earth cycle. It's natural, not man-made.
But we've now hit it with a big sledgehammer. That's what we've done effectively with global warming. And I believe that, if you look at people like... There was a very good interview that I watched, somebody called Dr. Tom Valone, who's a leading energy expert. And, if you look on Conscious Media Network, I believe Edge Media have been showing some of those interviews.
Course, yeah.
He's well up on that, and he believes that, that we haven't got much time left to get off of fossil fuels.
Is this the 2012 thing again?
No, this is. He believes in global warming. He believes that the ice caps are melting, and that there's going to be catastrophic events over the next 50 years. But even if you don't believe in global warming, I still think it's a good idea for these power systems that they undoubtedly have. I mean, the Americans have confiscated or secretized over 4,000 patent applications. They come and knock on people's door who've invented clean energy devices, and they secretize them because they say that they want them to use them for military purposes. And this has happened to 4,000 patents.
Well, they could have military applications, but it could be that they're not anything to do with, you know, global warming.
Well, let's take the example of
fossil fuel use.
Of Stan Myers, okay? Have we got enough time before the break to talk about?
Yeah, we've got 3 minutes 40 or so.
Okay. Stan Myers invented a car which ran purely off water, right? Now, he submitted his patent application, and then the Pentagon rang him up and said, we need to talk about this. And he basically didn't go along with it. So they came to his house, and they forced him to go. And they said, look, we're going to secretize your water-powered car because we want to use it for our military vehicles.
But they're not using it for their vehicles.
No, they're not. You see, there's doubt over whether Stan Myers' water-powered car actually works or not, but that's not the point.
I would have thought
the point is that this was not really an obviously military technology. It was an energy-saving technology. It wasn't, you know, specifically military. It wasn't a weapon, and they still tried to secretize it and say that they wanted to use it for military purposes,
well,
so the commercial world couldn't have it. So this is their mentality.
If you're saying that the Illuminati control the oil and the oil gives them wealth and riches, then obviously they wouldn't want people to stop using oil, because overnight there'd be no demand.
I mean, if the Earth was switched from oil, I mean, the very powerful people would not be powerful, and you know, that's, I believe definitely that these patents are being secretized, and people who invent certain technologies, quite often they're bought out by the military. They end up working for them, you know. So the technology still remains secret. Either that, or they no longer. I mean, Stan Myers died in mysterious circumstances. He came running out of a restaurant saying that he'd been poisoned, and then he dropped down dead.
So perhaps he had.
Perhaps he had what?
Been poisoned.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. And I don't think that's the only case where that has happened. And this is why this is why the UFO subject is the tip of a very big iceberg. You know, I believe that there are so many secrets that would benefit this world, and that's why the British Parliament really need to be talking about this subject.
Well, do you think then, I mean, I know we've talked about this on previous show a little bit, but do you think then that all these aliens that you say are visiting Earth or living here underground or wherever, that some of them are benign, do you think that those benign aliens are going to come to the point where they think, those poor Earthlings, they've been lied to and betrayed, and it's time we actually said, hi guys, here's a bit of technology you need, and so on. Do you think that's going to happen? Yeah,
well, I mean, in 1954, allegedly, the aliens handed over some technology to President Eisenhower, so that's already happened. I mean, I have heard that the view is that the reason why they generally don't interfere is because as soon as they start to interfere, they are then in charge. They are then effectively our leaders. As soon as they've said, you're going in the wrong direction, let us take control of the Earth, we'll fix it for you, we are then subservient to them.
And then, of course,
in certain races of aliens, they want us to fix it for ourselves, because they respect the human race. Some races of aliens, I genuinely believe that.
But isn't it also the case? I mean, if what you're saying is correct, and I'm not for a moment saying that is the case, but it might be. If there are lots of races of aliens here, and they all have politics to deal with, then perhaps they wouldn't want to upset the other aliens by being the one that declares who they are.
Yes, and the aliens which met with...
Sorry, yes, we're going for a second break now. Once again, if you'd like to text in your questions or comments, why not do so now? Just text 87778 with the word EDGE and then your text, and we'll see you back here with Richard D. Hall very soon. Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, Richard D. Hall. Just before the break, we were talking about President Eisenhower meeting with aliens.
Yes, and allegedly there was a second race of aliens which tried to contact Eisenhower or the power structure, who tried to warn them about this other race of aliens. So I'm sure there are politics within the different sects of aliens from different planets. The thing I would say is that when people try and understand aliens' motives and ideologies, they generally do it approach it with a kind of a human slant on it. In order to understand a complete alien's sort of mindset, you've got to throw off any preconceptions that you have about how we would behave. You know, people say things like, well, why haven't they contacted us?
But could it be so different, though? Why would they be that different?
Well, why would they be the same? I would expect there to be fundamental differences.
Well, I mean, for instance, the examples that you've given in the past, they are all bipedal with 2 arms and fingers and so on, and a head at the top of the, at the highest point.
Exactly, and I believe that this was something which puzzled the US military when they were, were compiling the information on the different races of aliens. The fact that it's true doesn't mean that it's that it shouldn't be, if you see what I'm saying. They don't, perhaps, millions or billions of years ago, there is some common ancestry,
But not with all of them, surely.
I mean,
it would have to be 1, maybe, wouldn't it, or 2, possibly.
That is something which did puzzle them. The fact that they're generally all bipedal with 2 eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs, so.
But maybe that's just a good system that works. I mean, where you've got an ecological niche, like in Australia, for instance, they didn't have cats, for instance. So there were, I mean, they're all extinct now, but there were animals that were a bit like cats. That were marsupials, and they just kind of evolved into that ecological niche. So maybe it just happens to be that bipedal, upright human type shapes work very well.
Yeah, perhaps.
For sentient beings.
Yeah.
You've got to have your hands free. If you're walking on 4 limbs, you can't use your hands to hold tools, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
And if your head is at the top of your body and you're standing upright, you can see for a long way and see your enemies coming.
Yes.
For instance.
And there's the other theories of the fact that the human race was possibly genetically modified or interfered with, hundreds of thousands of years ago by alien species. And there are a few people who have theories about that, Zachariah Sitchin and Lloyd Pye, people like that, who say that other races have come to Earth and interbred with Homo sapiens, well, with other previous hominids and created Homo sapien.
Lloyd Pye is a man with a Star Child skull, isn't he, I believe?
Yes, his skull that he believes belongs to an alien.
And if Lloyd Pye is watching and would like to be on the edge, please call us
He would be a great person to
and let us know. We'd love to have him on and bring your skull with you. I believe he's in America, isn't he?
Yeah. But my campaign is to try and get the subject politicised and to get politicians talking about it basically because of the first 2 parts of the show. And
well, we've got to show that clip then, haven't we, talking about politicians.
In order to try and get the subject into the political arena, I went to an event where David Cameron was speaking, and I asked him the question relating to comments that Edgar Mitchell had made last summer about Roswell. Dr. Edgar Mitchell was the 6th man on the moon, highly respected, a lot of reputation to lose by saying that aliens are real and Roswell was real.
Okay.
And I put those comments to David Cameron.
Right, let's have that clip then, please.